Let's adjust this. There we go. Should have had that done beforehand. All right, welcome, welcome. I think I am finally live now. All right. Hello, how is everybody doing tonight? I see some people rolling in on TikTok. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. My name is Tina. I am a happiness coach. I'm an artist. I share my experience, strength, and hope on this live, and I talk about certain topics that deal with trauma, that deal with my experience and how I went from being in a dark place and getting to a happy place. I share this in the hopes that it might help somebody out there the way I've been helped. Okay, so today we are going to have a few different topics of what I'm going to cover. So it's going to be a little bit popcorn, a little bit storytelling. So it should be a fun night. Well, fun-ish, because some of the stuff that I am going to share is deeply personal. So please be respectful in the comments and stuff like that. If you do have questions, please ask those questions in the comments and I will try to answer those for you, okay? So for those of you that are new, one of the things that I like to do and what has helped me in my healing journey is actually art therapy. And sometimes I'll do abstract art just so that I can be in the present moment, and it takes my mind off of the anxiety and it takes my mind off of worrying about the future or being depressed about the past. I am in the present moment, and that is like the best place for me to be when I am working on art. Now there's other times where I'm a little bit more intentional, where I'm actually creating a picture that is representative of something that I've dealt with in the past. And when you're doing this kind of art therapy, this isn't about being an artist and being talented. I don't care if you draw stick figures. I don't care if you use AI to generate an image and then you kind of piece it together on like a Bristol board kind of thing, right? It is important to do this as an expression for yourself, as a way to create it as a healing tool. So one of the experiences that I want to share with you today, because I was like, I do a little bit of meditation and centering before I come on these lives, and I never quite know what I'm gonna come up with. Sometimes I write out stuff in the morning, and then in the evening there's something different that comes up. So tonight is one of the ones where something different came up, and I just asked and I prayed and I said, okay, what is it that I need to share? And I'm like, really? I gotta share that? No, I don't wanna. So here we go again. I gotta share some certain things. So there is this one part of my story when I was being sexually abused. I was probably in grade 8, I think. Yeah, grade 8. And this was at the time where the sexual abuse went from touching and fondling to actual penetration. And that happened. When that happened, I remember having an out-of-body experience. And I remember in part of my healing and my recovery, I think I read a book, I think it was Doreen Virtue, where she talked about being in a car accident, and I didn't realize I had that out-of-body experience until I read Doreen Virtue's book, where she talked about where she was kind of floating at the ceiling and she looked down and she could see her body. And when I read about that, it actually sparked a flashback from when I was being abused. And I remember at that time, with the force of my abuser's weight on me, that I remember being up on the ceiling, and I remember a presence being with me, holding me safe, and taking me away while this happened. And I didn't remember that particular experience until I read that book. And I just remember being taken away from the event as it was happening. And I don't remember any of the stuff that was going on during the event, and then coming back to my body and not being fully attached in my body. And I didn't know that this kind of stuff was a side effect of the abuse that I had gone through. And I wanted to share that in case somebody out there that maybe they hadn't realized that something that they went through was affecting them that way. So when I was doing my art therapy, this was one of the pictures that I created. Oops, see there on TikTok. And it was just like an angel being carrying me away to somewhere in the heavens so that I would be safe. And I painted that not as a reminder of that event, but as a reminder that no matter how bad things get, that I will be protected, that I have a guardian angel looking over me and taking care of me. And I remember as I was going through and healing some of that stuff, I had to start doing a lot of work in being able to, hey Grady, good to see you, welcome. Your exams are coming up and you're getting stressed. Stay tuned because I have some good tips on how to deal with the stress of certain things. So stay tuned, stick around, okay? So doing that art therapy stuff was really helpful for me in being able to focus on the present moment and to capture a way that I am always being taken care of, envisioning. And you know what? I don't know if that was real or if that's a thing of my imagination or whatever. It doesn't really matter. I know that it actually brought me comfort. So that is the main thing that is actually important. So in dealing with that, before flashbacks, anxiety, those kind of things used to really, really stress me out, that I would get really anxious about it. I felt out of control when these images would come back, because flashbacks, they're images or sensations in your body that come back that you don't understand why they're there. They don't seem to belong with what's going on in your current reality. But how I look at flashbacks now is that when those things come up for me, that those are cues, they're messages for me to signal that there is something from that event that I need to learn, something that I need to remember, something that I am ready to actually heal. And so now when I used to be afraid to kind of, like I tried to shove those things out of my mind and not think about them, and I would distract myself with all different kinds of things. And now I can actually look at those events with curiosity and kind of go, okay, so this is coming up. What is my subconscious trying to tell me here? Sometimes it's a message of that there are certain similar dangers that I'm involved in and currently that are reminiscent of that past, not maybe in such extreme cases, but there's something of where I'm feeling pressured, where I'm feeling detached or dissociated from my body. And this is a kind of like a call to awareness to say, hey, you need to look at this. What's going on with you? How do you ground yourself? Looking at it from a perspective of being curious, of being mindful, and being really kind and gentle. And the reason that I can do that is because I had somebody, I had my therapist, I had friends that I was surrounded with that were in a recovery process, that were doing the healing work. And I had my entire 20s, I was surrounded by people that were deeply invested in healing themselves, in growing, in becoming better people themselves, and looking at this really scary, hard stuff from their past as a pathway to freedom, because there's no way around it, there's only through it, right? And you can try to avoid it. The only thing that you can do is delay, but you will eventually have to go through that. And going through that in a safe place is really important, and being able to get through that. And it can be so easy to distract ourselves from that, but the thing is when we actually go through that, feel that pain, we can actually, we get the privilege of being able to view this from our adult perspective, and realizing that child or younger version, because sometimes it's not even when we're a child, it's like when we're a young adult or something like that that's happened that has not been good, but our current self, which is older and wiser than what we were in the past, allows us to look at the situation from a much more kind and supportive position, rather than looking at it from the stance of somebody who's gone through that, and we can now learn to support ourselves with it. So that's how I kind of look at things now, that I will, when those things come up, and some days, especially as I've been doing this, some days there's a lot of little flashbacks, and some are extreme, like the one that I just shared with you, and then there are some that are less extreme, and it's little things that'll come up that are like, a time that I was upset about something, a time that, I had a fight, or somebody said something nasty to me, or any of those kind of things might come up. And going through those and understanding those things actually helps you heal and move past it. And it takes away, when you go through a proper process, it takes away that energy that it drains from you. Because even if you're not paying attention to it, I promise you it is pulling on your energy, and eventually you have to pay that bill. Eventually you have to pay that emotional toll. It'll come up, and if you don't, there's usually consequences for it that we don't like, because we continue coping mechanisms and behaviors in order to avoid feeling those feelings, right? So one of the things is starting to pay attention to our bodies is a huge way to heal that. Little tension. So as I've been going through my healing journey, I find that there's times where, if I'm feeling stressed, so this is maybe something that you might be going through, Grady, that when I'm feeling stressed, I'll notice things like I get short-tempered, I get anxious, all of a sudden the volume of everything gets turned way up, and that is a trauma response of going through some of the things. It's like your body becomes on high alert. So all of a sudden it's like somebody's breathing will annoy me. The cat eating their food will annoy me. A human eating their food will definitely annoy me. All these, and I become super, super, super sensitive to sound. And I know that that is a signal, because before I would just ignore it, or I'd blame the other person and stuff like that. Now I look at that, it's like, oh, okay, everything seems really, really loud for me right now. Okay, I'm feeling anxious about something. Because one of the problems of going through childhood trauma, and it's complex PTSD, where it's been done over a long period of time, is we become super, super skilled at ignoring our feelings and not being present, not being attached or in our bodies. It's almost like we have this balloon of our soul kind of floating along behind us, and we're not really present in our bodies. So in learning those kind of things about me, when I start to see that, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm feeling anxious. Now, okay, what is it that's really triggering this anxiety in the present moment? Oh, okay, yeah, I got to do my live and I don't really want to talk about this. Oh, okay. All right, so now I have to give myself some support to go through those certain things and talk myself through in a positive way, as if I was talking with a best friend that was really scared about something. So, Grady, as you're feeling anxious about your exams and stuff like that, so obviously there's things that you can do to prepare that'll help reduce that anxiety, but not giving it too much power. That it's okay if you make a mistake. It's okay, right? Taking that stress off, because I don't know, it's kind of like when I used to play Mario Kart with my brother, and he would like run really close to me with the cart, and I would like kind of freak myself out. So it's like you end up psyching yourself up, that you might go off the edge, right? So giving yourself the ability to stay calm, doing some box breathing, whatever it is that you need to do. Sometimes it can also be releasing that energy. Put on some music that you like to dance to, that you like, it's a really good groove or a jam or whatever it is. I used to do this like when I would drive a lot. I would put on like, certain music, when I was feeling really good, which I try not to do because it caused me to speed a lot because I'd get involved in the music, but I try not to do that. But so that's one of the things that I did before coming on the live, is I put on some music that kind of brought me back into my body, got me dancing and moving and stuff like that, that helps me ground and be present in my body, and reminding myself that I'm safe. I am not physically in danger, that this stuff that's going on in my mind, it's okay. It's from the past. It's here to show me something. So being able to look that square in the eyes and know what try to find out what message is coming up that you need to know, that you need to learn about. So paying attention to your body, that can be anything from sight, sound, taste, touch, and sight, sound, smell. That's the last one. I knew there was another S one. Okay. So that one. So the five senses, right? Any of those can trigger a flashback to an unpleasant time, but any of those things can also pull us out of a flashback. So one of the things, like for smell, peppermint. The smell of peppermint is actually very calming for me, and it really helps, or I'll make a tea or a coffee, something like that, So smell is actually one of our more powerful senses, and it actually will help us. It can also trigger us very quickly too. The smell of certain colognes or something like that can remind you of somebody, bring you back to a specific place, a specific time, something like that. And when you've been exposed to trauma and you've been through trauma, those kind of things do come up, and it's our senses that end up anchoring in those experiences. And so finding different ways to rewrite that is key. So I already covered that. So that book by Doreen Virtue, and talking about her near-death experience is what the book is all about. I cannot for the life of me remember it. I know I read it years ago, but the piece that I remember her holding on to was being separated. She could look down and she could see her body, and she looked at her body with a whole lot more compassion, and she saw it as much more beautiful than when she was in it, because a lot of times, especially women in the 80s and 90s, we were taught
that our bodies are not good, right? So she had a whole lot more compassion for her body and appreciation. And I took that as a healing piece as well, because, you know, if we think about it when we die and we look back, that our bodies are vessels, and sometimes we've taken really good care of them and sometimes we've not taken so good of care of them. And when you spend most of your life disassociated from your body, you tend not to pay attention to it. So having to come home and be in my body has been a lot more challenging. It's been neglected for quite a few years, and it's under repair, kind of like a cottage that's been tucked away, and it's going through some renos right now. So I've been doing that, healing my body slowly but surely. And I believe as these things come off, as the weight comes off, as these things come out and I release these things, it is really healing and really free. So this brings me to another story that I had. So over the years, I've obviously tried to lose weight before. It's not my first time trying to do this stuff, and it never really stuck. And I understand why now it didn't stick, because that weight was actually serving a purpose at the time, and there was a benefit to it for me. That I wasn't prepared to find a different way. So you could give me all the programs, all the weight loss, blueprints, roadmaps, guides. There's so many that I've tried over the years. If you don't fix that psychological stuff behind the scenes, you won't be able to stick with it. You won't be able to stay with it. And sometimes that's a slow process in going through that healing journey. Because if it was as easy as following just a specific diet plan, I would have stuck with it and stayed with it. But there's other stuff that starts to come up emotionally, and it's taking those times to go through those things and understand, okay, what's going on here? What's going on with my body? And so back when I was healing, and I'm talking a lot about my first experiences, not because, I'm not currently still healing. I think it's an ongoing life journey. And as we grow and develop, that there's new levels, new things that come up. And it reminds me of, I think I was reading a book, I think it's The Courage to Heal, where it talked about a woman where she had done a lot of therapy work and healing work. And then when she ended up having kids and going through that, she ended up having to deal with a lot of flashbacks that came up from her past. And, she was really confused at the time because of, hey, I've done all this work. I thought I was over this. I thought I got through this. But there can be experiences that we go through in life again. That could be a work related issue, car accident, breakup, whatever it is that can trigger these things to come back up. And it's a matter of dusting off the tools, because once you learn these tools, you know how to get through them and you can progress through them. So I was very grateful the fact that I was able to dust off the tools that I had learned years ago and bring those back out and start using them again. So when I was first doing recovery stuff, I realized that one of the things I used to do was I couldn't receive a compliment. If anybody tried to say anything nice about me, oh, I really like that dress that you're wearing. Oh, this, no. I bought this for $5. Like, it was on a clearance rack. It's no big deal, right? And I would always give you some reason why your compliment wasn't correct. And I had a really hard time with it until a friend of mine called me out on it and said, you're not really taking in these compliments, which was funny because I really liked the compliments, but I couldn't receive them. And I started to practice by giving myself those compliments, that I would start looking for things that I liked about myself. So one of the things that I had to do was I started with telling myself that I actually liked, because I couldn't really like anything positive about my body at the time. And, you know, I weighed less than I do now. I wish all those times, it's like, you know, that I had appreciated that at the time, because, you know, I didn't know that it would escalate. So always having gratitude for where we're at, and giving ourselves that positive reinforcement. So I learned to tell myself what is right about myself, and I started training my mind on focusing what is right about me. And so I would focus on that I had good skin, or I had strong legs, because, you know, you have to have strong legs to carry all that extra weight. So at least I had that, right? You know, so there's certain things that I would try and take those, what I thought at the time were negatives, and I turned those around into becoming positives. And I started using those as my affirmations to tell myself repeatedly what was right about myself, because I was so conditioned to focus on everything that was wrong. And so I started to do that. And I also started to realize too that I would panic if somebody gave me a gift. And if they gave me something that was really expensive, then I'd really kind of go over the top. And whatever you gave me, I felt like I had to give you 10 times more. And when I started to look at where does that come from, and I was looking at that stuff again today, because I still hang on to that energy. It isn't as bad as it was back then, because it used to be a very conscious anxiety that I had, that it's like, no, I couldn't take any of the gifts. I know that that ties back to the past trauma of anytime I received anything, especially from the main abuser, then that was leveraged against me. And that was also used as proof that I had asked for what had happened. And that wasn't the case. I didn't know that at the time. You get told that stuff, you're a child, you believe it, especially if that's somebody who is in authority, and there's a mix of reward and punishment. So it gets really confusing, and it gets very difficult to try and sort out, well, did I ask for this? Because I did accept that gift, so I must have done that, right? So you end up starting to believe this stuff, and it can make it difficult to be able to receive or believe that you are able to receive things in your life, whether that's a better life, a better partner, a better job, a better pay, any of those kind of things. And these, our inability to accept and receive more, usually is tied into a belief from the past of somehow that we weren't worthy of that, or that if we did accept that, that there's some sort of consequence that would come out of that. So becoming aware of these kind of things allows us to start to be able to make little changes. So knowing that, how I start to deal with this is I start to look at, well, what am I comfortable receiving? Where, like, you know, what is my baseline? Where am I at with understanding this? Where can I start to expand, take that next step out? So, and starting to ask for things that I wanted. And so some of the small steps that I took were, at a restaurant, I would ask for things on the side, or I would start to pay attention to, do I actually like this or don't I like this? Because before it was like, oh, I would just accept whatever was given to me, because if not, there were consequences. And I remember a time where I wanted a certain skirt because I wanted to look cool at school, and I knew all the other girls were kind of getting this style, And for the first time, I asked for that. Now, my mom was a single mom and didn't have a whole lot of money. And I know she was really stressed. And I know if there's some therapists out there, they're probably thinking, you're making excuses for her. And I'm like trying to understand, and because I know my mom listens to these things. So there isn't a resentment energy there now, but I know at the time she was angry and she screamed at me, and I know that this affected me because it came up, and it was like, oh, okay, I haven't thought of that particular experience in a while. Why did that come up today? Oh, okay. This was a time where I felt like I wasn't allowed to ask for anything that I wanted. That wasn't a conscious decision that I made. That wasn't a conscious thing that I was told directly. These are indirect experiences that come up. This is why flashbacks are valuable as tools to notify you that you are ready to actually start to heal this, that you are ready to look at it, that there's something going on today that your subconscious mind is retrieving that, going, hey, we've been through this before. I want you to look at this piece because there's some valuable information there. And it's up to us to start to look at that and understand what is going on. Why did that memory come up for me? Okay, how did I feel at that particular time? Okay, what happened during that memory? Okay, how does that apply to today's situation? And sometimes it's not, you can't be literal about it. You kind of have to have a general perspective. It's like, so in this case, it's like the belief of that if I ask for what I want, that I'm being bad, right? So it's like, okay, so how does that correlate to what's going on for me today? What is it that I feel like I want to ask for, but I'm afraid to ask for that because if I ask for that, then I will be viewed as bad. So then we can start to look at that and we can start to dissect whether or not that is actually truth or not. Am I actually bad if I want to go out for dinner? Or am I actually bad if I want to get my nails done? Or whatever it is that you are wanting to ask, but you won't allow yourself to ask for that because of this belief that was formed in the past that it's still running as an operating system in your day-to-day life. And if a flashback has come up, then that is telling you that you need to look at that particular thing. And when I say flashback, it can just be a memory that has an emotion attached to it, right? So a particular thing that you remember from your childhood. I always like to ask myself, well, of all the things I experienced in my childhood, why is that memory coming up? Why that one? What's going on there? What do I need to learn from it? And so when we start to look at that, we can start to put action steps in place to start healing that from a logical perspective of how can I do things differently? You know, so what is it that I want right now that I am not asking for? And how can I start to break that down into smaller steps that I can start asking for things that I want? You know, maybe it's you had a feeling that you couldn't speak up, or that you were silenced, or that you were told that you were stupid. This is an opportunity for you to start looking at, well, is there something that I haven't been speaking up about that I actually want to speak up about? And taking that courageous step in today, you don't have to go back into the past. Start taking the step today to heal that one particular thing of, okay, you know what? I don't like the way that you talked to me about that. And you know what? That actually did upset me. And it doesn't have to be a big thing because you're dealing with a small thing that happened today. But it's in taking that action, you begin to actually heal yourself. And in healing what's going on today, that 20% of effort that's going on today heals 80% from the past. And that's how we start to break the chains and break the ties from the past, is by taking the action steps that we need today that are similar to things that have happened to us in the past. And that flashback is coming up as a signal to you to say, hey, this needs to be looked at. There's a similar situation going on today that will allow you to heal that past if you look at it. If not, it'll add another link to that chain, and it ties you down even further until you get to a point where you're forced to look at it. So those are some of the things, and I wanted to share some other stuff. So for those of you that have been on here, know that a big part of my healing and surviving the childhood that I went through was through prayer. And my prayers and my way of talking to God are very personal. They're Christian-ish. They are not very structured. And how do I explain this? I have a personal connection with God because I think a lot of it was developed as a child of just being able to survive and being alone, being isolated, being times of where I'd sit in the apartment window, and that's another piece of my art therapy stuff that I've done, that I would sit in the apartment window and I would look out at the lights of the other apartment buildings. And I would envision other people having these, nice dinner parties where people talked about interesting things, and there wasn't any drinking, there wasn't any swearing or fighting. I don't really care about swearing these days, but at the time it was like, there wasn't any yelling. So I don't care so much about the swearing as much as the yelling, right? And people were pleasant, they were cordial, they were kind of like a bunch of teachers together, actually, because I loved teachers and I love school because of the structure. There was clear expectations. There wasn't any wild surprises like what I grew up in. So having a nice, safe, stable environment was something that I would imagine. And one of the things that I would tell myself as I would talk to God, and what would come to me, is that I was going to make it through. I was going to make it through, and that this wasn't going to last forever. That I just had to hang on one more day. And that is what I had anchored in as a child. And so when I went back through these last couple of years, which have been particularly challenging, I reconnected with those child part. And not only did I nurture that child, but I recognized the strength that inner child within me actually had. And I realized that, that strength is always within me, that I carry that with me. She survived all of that with no coping mechanism, no tools, no nothing. Her only thing was a genuine heartfelt prayer delivered from a child that was protected. And that was protected even when she didn't know how to ask for that. And that guardian angel took her away while that event happened. And, that piece has been a crucial part. It's also one of the pieces that I don't like to talk about very often. And I think a lot of times because in the environment that I grew up in, church people, the ones that talk Christianese, they prayed kind of weird. It just didn't, it didn't seem like talking to a normal person. And I still tend to shy away from that, even though I am a believer and I do believe in Jesus and I do believe in God and all of that kind of stuff. I have huge resistance to the rules of church and that environment. I also have huge resistance when I hear people talking or praying in certain ways that are and I don't mean this, I don't know how to say this without being disrespectful, because I know that when people do that kind of prayer, they do believe it. But there have been times where I've been in church and people will give lip service to stuff, and I'm really, really good at picking up energy. And so sometimes they would say the words and they'd be saying their prayers, and I don't even know how to imitate them because it just seems so foreign and it just seems so fake to me. I know there's a lot of like, our Father God, and they'll repeat that over and over and over again. And for me, that is a huge turnoff, and I don't like to listen to that. And I know they mean well, but it doesn't sit well for me. And I think it's because for me, it's a much more personal connection with God. I talk with God as if he was my best friend, that he's just another person. And I wouldn't keep saying, hey, Father John, Father John, Father John over and over again when I'm talking to somebody. That would just be weird. And I know it's probably a sign of respect or something like that, that people are doing that. But, you know, being able to be aware of the communication styles that we have and how we pray for somebody and doing it in a way that feels comfortable for them, being able to read the cues, and no different than any communication style, whether you're doing this for business or with personal or any of that kind of stuff, you always have to take your audience into account of who am I communicating with? What is their awareness level, right? You know, are they an expert in their field? Do they actually know what you guys are talking about? Because you have to meet them where they are. It's like if they know nothing about this particular subject matter, or particularly if they are resistant, they're not really, you know, down with the whole Jesus thing, you know, talking and praying like that, be aware of, is that actually comfortable for them, or is it not? Or is there a way that you can modify the same prayer to be in a way that they can actually receive it, and being able to allow them to receive that? Because if not, we might be putting up roadblocks that prevent people from getting the help that they need, from being able to connect with God in an authentic way that helps them. So this is why I share some of the stuff that I've done, because I am and still am resistant to that kind of stuff. If somebody gets too churchy with me, it's a huge turn off. I pull away, and I am a believer. So, and I was thinking a lot of, you know, what is my relationship with God? What is my relationship with Jesus? I don't typically say Jesus a lot, even though I believe in his teachings. I don't know if that's a hierarchy thing, that, you know, that I tend to want to go to the source and I'm going to bypass the middleman. So I'm probably prone to that a little bit. But it's like, you know, trying to understand myself and examining, why am I resistant to certain things, and why am I resistant to a connection with God and prayer and all those kind of things, and understanding what is it about it that I don't like, and how can I turn this into, it's like, okay, well, if there is a possible benefit that I could get from it, how could I actually get that benefit in a way that is palatable to me, right? And so that's how I look at it, and I find different ways to communicate with this. So, for example, there's some communication terminology, like when people talk about being a sinner. And if you're in the Christian environment, that's actually a good thing. It's like, yeah, we're all sinners, and, you know, it's all wonderful. But people on the outside, they're looking in kind of going, you are a sinner, hellfire, brimstone, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, fuck no, don't want to deal with that. No thanks. You stay over there. I don't want any part of that. Meanwhile, it's like, that's not the intent, but because it's kind of like, the lingo, but they don't. So it ends up that we end up building up these religious structures and barriers to God. And when you think about Jesus himself, of what he did, it's like he came down, he was, according to the stories, and I'm going to paraphrase a lot of based on my understanding, but he was basically a rebel. The Jewish faith, had a lot of rules, had a lot of structures and different ways of behaving. Felix, no! Stop it. Come here. Sorry, my cat has decided that he wants to start talking. So, Jesus was a rebel. He came to bring down the religious system of the day because it was creating a barrier for people to feel the actual love of God. When we think of the different structures, the communication, the rituals, the routines, whatever it is, sometimes we have to look, how do those affect people that still need to be connected with God in some way? Has that been used to harm people? Because there's been people that I've talked to over the years that they were actually, their trauma came from people that were in the church. So not only were they traumatized by people that they trusted, but now they feel like they have a trauma with God. And that is not a good thing, because now they can't get that support. Wow, Tay, thank you so much for the heart. I really, really appreciate the gift. Thank you so much. So when we think of that, that Jesus came down to tear apart these structures so that people had easier access and a direct connection with God. And going back to sin, I remember when I first started examining this stuff, and I did a lot of research about different things, and I remember finding out the word sin and what it actually meant. And it was actually an archery term, and it means to miss the mark. So instead of all this hellfire and brimstone stuff, let's look at this is, hey, we missed our target. And when you think of that stuff on a daily basis, there's always times that we're going to miss our target. We're going to fall short of the ideal of what it is that we're looking for and what we're striving for. So it's a matter of making gentle corrections rather than, trying to beat that out of us. And it is something of a way of us knowing that we are off target rather than this whole hellfire and brimstone. It's just we're off target and we need to get back on track. Okay? And so when we think of some of the stuff that the stories of Jesus, and I don't know if some of you know or not, and I'm not the best at being able to tell this stuff. Most of my stuff comes from childhood stuff, Sunday school, and the sermons that I would listen to when I was a little kid, and I'd run around to various churches, and I loved the Baptist church. They had the best choirs, and I loved to sing, and I loved to be in the choir kind of stuff, until they tried to get me to go down with the other kids, and then I didn't want to play, and my parents didn't actually go. I actually was the one there, so when they tried to control me, I was like, that's it, I'm out. So a couple of things that came to mind today for me was thinking about anger. And I know everybody talks about the positivity stuff and everything. I don't find anger as such a bad thing. Now, getting stuck in anger and staying there is a problem. Acknowledging it and being aware of it, that it's come up, is just a signal usually that our boundaries have been crossed. That's usually the first signal. and it's a warning sign. It's a good thing if we channel the energy properly. Okay. And if we look at the example of Jesus, it's like, even he lost his shit. He lost it, but he is slow to anger, not, he doesn't have a short fuse. It took quite a bit for him to get there, but when he did, he really freaking lost it, flipped tables over, beat the hell out of people, the money lenders that were in the synagogue, right? So it was like, you don't belong here, and it was an injustice that caused him to have that kind of anger. So anger isn't necessarily a bad thing. It is making sure that we don't get stuck in it, and also that we are not quick to anger, that we're slow to anger, that we've thought about this kind of stuff, and then when it is appropriate, that we express that in a way, maybe not that way, but those kind of things. And so looking, how do we apply this stuff to our day-to-day lives, right? This is where it's like, well, what if we took those lessons literally and we actually went, okay, am I quick to anger or am I slow to anger? What are the things that cause me to get angry? Okay, I'm not sleeping enough, or I'm hungry, or you know what, I actually hate this job that I'm doing, and every day I'm coming in and I'm pissed off and I'm angry. And it's like, why aren't you doing something about it if you hate it that much? Nobody's forcing you there. You can go someplace else. You can do something else. Being able to pull back the power that we actually have within ourselves is a huge thing. So the emotion isn't a bad thing. None of the emotions that we have, whether they're fear, anxiety, any of that stuff, they are all just signals and ways to tell us that we need to look at something. They are cues. They are not meant to stay, right? And even the good emotions, you know, think of somebody who's always, always happy, and it's like, did you drink the Kool-Aid? What is wrong with you? You know, so if they're like all glassy-eyed, you get a little bit scared of them, right? It's like, you're not normal, because emotions are meant to flow. They're meant to change. There's different things that'll set them off. And these are all internal guiding systems and being able to give us valuable information. So if we are doing things to numb our emotions, the problem is if you are trying to numb anger or pain or anxiety, any of those kind of things, when you numb one, you numb them all. You can't feel happiness, joy, any of those kind of stuff if you are suppressing your anger, you're suppressing your anxiety, you're suppressing your fear, your depression, any of those kind of feelings. If you're suppressing one, you're suppressing them all, and you will rob yourself of the ability to feel that great joy, that great happiness, love, contentment, peace, all of those higher level, high vibration emotions if we're suppressing the other feelings, right? So being able to understand that our emotions are meant to flow, they are meant to change, and they change on a dime. It's just data input, and it's giving us information on what is affecting us and how it's affecting us. And our job is to understand, what is my reaction? How am I reacting? How do I actually want to react to this? And turn it into intentional action rather than just being reactive to everything that happens around us. One of the things that I find that helps the most is being able to slow down, do journaling. So especially if I'm having flashbacks or past memories or stuff that's coming up that's triggering some emotion, writing that stuff down, especially if it's on the more negative side, that isn't me giving that I know we talk a lot about not giving things attention and don't give it any weight and stuff like that, but for me this is a way to purge that out, almost a way to confess the sin, to get it out of the system, because then afterwards I fill myself up with God's love, right? So, but I can't do that if there's all that gunk inside, all that yickiness and those negative emotions and those negative feelings. They're not real anyway, so get them out, put them on paper. They don't matter. Destroy them afterwards if you have to. But get them out of your system and then fill yourself up with positive thoughts, good thoughts, happy thoughts, those kind of things. Okay? So this brings me to the lesson of, before we get into that, I'll have a little more tea. How are we doing, guys? Is this helpful? Thanks for everybody who's on TikTok. Wow, I've got quite a few likes. Thank you for tapping the screen and sharing the live. If you are new to my channel, I do come on around 9:30 Eastern Standard Time every day for the next little while. Who knows how long I'll be doing this, but I come on to share my experience, strength, and hope to be able to hopefully help 1 million people heal past trauma, because when one of us heals, it affects at least 10 other people around us. So it will have a domino effect. So let's talk about the lesson from Jesus of turn the other cheek, right? That if somebody goes to strike you and smacks you in the face, instead of retaliating to them, turn the other cheek and let them smack the other side. And a lot of people have a whole, there's a polarized view on this. It's like, hell no, I'm not going to let anybody smack me. I'm going to stand up for myself and I'm going to fight back. And while that can be good, what would be the benefit of doing that? Why do you think that he would tell us those kind of things? Because, and I think it has a lot to do with, there is love and there is fear. Fear is actually illusion. Love is the only thing that's real. So when we react and we lash back out, that is going to cause them pain. They will be in fear. They will lash back. And it's this never-ending cycle. So you have the power to actually stop that from happening by not reacting, not lashing back out. And we have control over our own emotions, even when it doesn't feel like it. And I know we're all human, so we will sin, we will miss the target, we will fall short of the ideal, and we might lash out. I know I've done it at work where, I just have had enough of that department and they've been doing it over and over and I've let it go like the last 20 times, and this time I've had enough and I send out that zinger email and I tell them off. And that usually was the one time I misread the email and I didn't see the one thing that they weren't actually attacking me, but I reacted like they were attacking me, and now I'm the idiot. So this is kind of why it's a fun example of how turning the other cheek, letting that stuff slide, because I can promise you the time that you actually lash out is the one time that you probably shouldn't. And that's because if we're in a state of love, we're in a state of understanding, and we can see clearly that the other person is in fear and they're actually crying out for love, attention, whatever it is, that they are in pain. So if we equate it to that, then we know not to react. You don't punish somebody who's already in pain. You have compassion for them. And think of it, especially if there's somebody you love. It's only when we are in pain that we don't give a fuck. And we're like, well, I don't care. I'm going to friggin' give it back to them, right? Think about it. Has there been any time that you have lashed out, whether it's in verbally, harsh criticism, snide remarks, whatever it is? Have you been in a good place yourself? Have you been like, I am super happy, I love life, and I love everything that's going on in my life, and I'm delightful, and let's go find somebody to kick around? No. You're like, and even if somebody does something to you, you're like, don't worry about it. Like, if you're good, you're like, don't worry about it. Like, come on over here, let's fix this, let's work this out, right? You always try to find that place of understanding. It's only when we get in pain ourselves that we will lash out. Imagine if every single one of us took this literally and we didn't lash out when somebody lashed out at us. What kind of world would we live in if that was the case? We wouldn't have abuse. We wouldn't have wars. We wouldn't have, people in pain, people suffering. Because we're not lashing out, we're not giving tit for tat and harming others. So even if others harm us, not reacting to that, not lashing back out. Not saying that you have to accept abuse. If you're in an abusive situation, you do have the right to protect yourself. Absolutely. Protect yourself, value yourself. You just don't have to lash back. That's all. Okay? So please don't get that confused with turning the other cheek as an excuse to accept abuse or abusive behavior. That is not the case. It is a matter of not reacting in kind. When somebody hurts me, I'm going to hurt them. Don't do that. Practice that in small ways in your daily life. That time that you're like, you know what, I'm just going to lose it. I've had enough. You yell at somebody in traffic. You yell at the server. You've had enough. I can promise you, anybody who's ever done that is because they're in pain. So if you see somebody behaving badly, they are in pain. They need some help. Maybe they just need a nap. Maybe they need a hug. Maybe somebody died in their family. Maybe they're stressed out about something and they're in so much fear and turmoil. You have the power to help that person by changing their life, by being an example of love instead of yet another example proving that their fear, that their illusion is real, that their nightmare is real, and it's not. We all have to look at each other like we're a bunch of kids, and some of us are in a nightmare, and you don't beat a kid that has had a nightmare and they wake up screaming, right? No, you try to comfort them, you cuddle them, you hold them. So looking at people behaving badly in the same light gives you that perspective of that they're a child that is in fear, that is in terror. They need to be comforted in some sort of way. Okay? All right. Two other things that I wanted to go over that I was thinking about this morning that felt guided to bring up and talk about today. And this kind of goes in line with Jesus is a rebel. And, when you think of who did he hang out with, he didn't hang out with only the people in church stuff and synagogue or all that kind of stuff. He hung out with whores, lepers, criminals, all that kind of stuff. That's who the people that he hung out with. And he probably got a shit ton of flack for hanging out with those kind of people. They were the degenerates of the day, right? But he wasn't afraid of that because he was the Son of God. He knows God's love. He knows what's possible. And of all the people who needed it the most, they needed it. So it's a matter of why am I bringing this up? Well, a couple of reasons. Yes, it's good to hang around people that have like-minded ideals and share similar beliefs. It's also important and it's good to have that as an anchor for ourselves, a reminder, because sometimes we can get lost in the dark. So it's being able to find our way back home, but only surrounding ourselves by those kind of people and not reaching out to help other people that are in need, I think is a disservice, and it doesn't actually share God's love. So thinking of those kind of things of who could I expand outside of my social circle, especially if they're people that you wouldn't normally like to hang around. that they don't have the same values of you? Can you be a walking example, a living, breathing example of God's love because you have a connection with God? And this isn't about trying to ram stuff down people's throats about, how they should behave and they should follow these rules because this is the way and this is the only one. It's like, sorry, I felt like that was a Mandalorian kind of reference. But, if you have that strong connection, do you live this on a daily basis? Do you have that in your heart? And if not, you have to question yourself of why not? If I am a believer and I am not in that space, what is it that I need? Because we're all responsible for us getting right ourselves. And it's not up to us to fix others to make them right with themselves. It's through our example that others will follow us. So this is why we have to focus on ourselves and our own connection and cultivating that. And when we do that, we can't help but operate in love because we're already connected to God's love, and that just oozes out. It shines out from us. And but if we try to pull people in, then that's not good either, right? Because they're going to resist that kind of change. Anytime you try to change somebody, their natural inclination is to say, no, I don't want to change, right? So you have to be that example that they notice that there's something different about you, and it sparks curiosity in them, that they come forward, that they want. It's like, well, how do you do this? Like, how is it that you are the way that you are? How are you able to do this stuff? How are you able to see things in such a positive light? Where does this strength that you have come from? And they become curious about it, and they start asking those kind of questions to know more. And those are the ones that, this is why I tend to be more private until I started coming on here, because I guess this is what I'm supposed to talk about, even though I don't wanna. But I'm trying to be obedient of what it is that I'm guided to do. So I'm sharing this stuff because if I didn't have this spiritual connection, I wouldn't have survived what I survived. I also wouldn't have healed to the depth that I've healed without it. Because I know when I first started therapy, it was just therapy that I was going to. I didn't have any spiritual connection. And then it was when my uncle got told he had to go to AA because he got in trouble at work, and we started to go to a 12-step program to support my aunt because we didn't have any drinkers in our home. It was just my mom, my brother, and I living at the house. And to me, I was over the moon ecstatic, because I was like, finally, we're free of the abuser, right? So for me, just having a mom and a brother, that was a perfect family for me. My mom always kept trying to find that, that missing piece, the guy to kind of, be in there, because that's what a proper family is. And it's like, no, family is where you feel safe. Family is where you feel loved. Family is home, right? So making sure that you have those elements, just because it's like, a mom and dad and, siblings, it's not always a safe place. It's got to be a safe place for it to be a home. Sorry, I went off on a huge tangent there. Let's see if I can find my way back. Yeah, so being able to talk about this stuff. The last thing I wanted to talk about was, so in the example of Jesus, of the power to resurrect and heal ourselves. So, and I know when I started my early journey, I started to read books like Louise Hay. And if you haven't read some of her stuff, but she talked about how different parts of our bodies hold different emotions, and it causes illnesses within the body. And I think her book is You Can Heal Your Life. And I remember taking some of that stuff, and she basically healed herself from cancer through positive affirmations. And I'm like, interesting, right? But there's been examples of this kind of stuff, and this is similar to, you know, when I think of Jesus, I think of God sending down his son to provide us an example of what is possible and how we can connect with God's love and tapping into that. And I focus on bringing healing energy within myself. And I will often ask, like I will tap into imagining that there's like a beam of golden light coming down through my head into my body and healing all of the cells in my body, and just going through that over and over and over and over again. And I know Joe Dispenza does a lot of work on these kind of energy stuff, and there's people that they measure it scientifically and stuff like that. And I think we will find that there is the ability to heal the human body and heal ourselves. So imagine if we actually took these teachings literally. Is it possible? How could it be possible? And even if you don't believe in that, just shifting your mindset to a perspective of a solution oriented instead of automatically assuming that it's all mumbo jumbo, crunchy granola, mystical woo woo stuff, right? And I know, because I've been there, I've been one of those, that's too crunchy granola for me. Funny because I love crunchy granola actually, but I talk about that kind of stuff because I was so resistant, and I would be embarrassed to share those kind of things and talk about those kind of things for fear of it not seeming logical, right? But at the same time, I know if I didn't have this, I didn't have my belief, I didn't have a connection with a God of my understanding, not the one that I found in churches, not that I found in the Bible or Quran or any of those kind of things. I pick and choose. I take what I like and I leave the rest. So that was adapted from 12-step programs, and that allowed me to open up enough that I could build a connection with something outside of myself that could provide me strength and support and belief to go on one more day, especially when things get really, really hard and when they get really, really dark. That's when we have to anchor in to something outside of ourselves. And if for short term, you can use somebody else's belief, somebody else's guidance, whether that's a coach, a mentor, a friend, a family member. However, we have to be careful not to put the pressure of God on somebody else. That's not their responsibility for them to fix us. And the only thing that can really truly heal the hole that we feel in our soul is God. And being able to fill ourselves up with that in whatever way, whether that's connecting with nature, because that was one of the ways that I found some sort of spiritual connection. It's been an ongoing journey, but I at least started to find a way to explore it in a way that worked for me, that I didn't have to try to fit myself into somebody else's belief. So even if you don't like some of the things that I'm saying, but there's one thing that you're like, maybe I could try that. Go ahead, try to implement something. And if none of it resonates, try to find something else. I dare you to say the prayer of, like, I don't believe that there is a God. I don't believe that there is some sort of energy or supreme being or, spaghetti monster, whatever it is that you believe. say that you don't believe it and that you want proof that there is something more to this life. Okay? And see what happens. Just see what happens. Try it. See what happens. See if it actually brings you comfort, peace. Does it scare you? Maybe it scares you because of, I know some people, they're like, well, shit, if that is actually real and I did all these things that would not be viewed as kosher or not good or, problematic, the whole sinner, I want to take you back to that piece of sin just means you missed the mark, that you fell into fear, which isn't real, and you operated from a place of fear. And God is love, and in his infinite capacity to love us would never ever punish us. Okay? So take those so-called sins, the places where you've missed the mark, and take those to God and give them to God and say, you know what, I really made a mess of this, and I continue to make a mess of this, and I'm not so good at this. I don't really believe in you, but this crazy lady on the internet said to try this, so I'm going to try this and see what happens and see if it helps. Because this was one of the pivotal things that actually changed for me. And it's one of the things that I have kept secret that I don't really share. So I am the closeted cursing Christian, if you will. So, but for me, it has been really powerful. And if you are one of those people that are believers, that you go to church and stuff like that, if you are talking with me, sharing with me, I will have compassion, but please don't get too churchy on me. It's still something that is not comfortable. So talking to me like a normal human being and just sharing your experience of what changed things for you and how, there were times that you struggled and then you put your faith in God, and then this is the thing that happened. This is the thing that changed. When you share that experience, wow, I'm really excited to know about that. I'm really excited to understand more of what you have experienced, as opposed to, preaching the hellfire and brimstone, because that doesn't really help, and it just keeps people alienated from God's love. Yeah, so with that, guys, I hope you found this helpful. These are the things that have really helped me go from being in a dark place, moving to a place of being happy and being able to deal with some of the challenging times that this life will throw at us. And like I said, I have held this belief and this stuff in my heart, and nobody would ever really notice that this was the belief, which I have to share one little story which I thought was funny. You know what, I think I'll save that for another day. So come back another time. Come back another time, guys. Thank you for coming to hang out with me. Thank you for the gifts and the likes and the shares and stuff like that. I really hope that this helps reach some people that if they've been through traumatic experiences, they have a place where they're in a dark place where they feel depression, suicide, or just, general, unhappiness, and that they just feel apathy, numb, that they just don't feel good about their lives and where they're at, then share the like. Tell them to come listen. 9 p.m., between 9 and 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when I pop on here. And if you have a particular subject that you would like me to talk about or do a training on, send me a message and I'll be more than happy to create something and share with that. So guys, I hope you found that helpful, and I hope you have a great night, and we will talk to you again tomorrow. Take care. Bye.